Welcome back to Wrestling Talk. Happy Thanksgiving Day. And on that note, if you are heading out to celebrate today with family, with friends, and just enjoy some very good food, then go ahead, go out there, be safe. But for the meantime, let's talk about professional wrestling. And let's talk about something that has been on my mind for quite a few months now, for almost 2 years at this point, because over the past 2 years since the pandemic started, WWE has really made some headlines in wrestling for some unfortunate actions. Because over the past 2 years, I believe they released over 80 plus superstars, over 80 plus wrestlers, and just a week ago they made another series of cuts. And that's something that wrestling fans, don't ever want to see, because for the most part, all these wrestlers you get to see on TV, you want more out of them, you get invested in them, and if they're cut, then you can't really enjoy that, and you feel their pain. But not only that, their careers are cut short in some instances, and in these cases, like today's Thanksgiving, we're about to enter the holidays, and most of these people are already unemployed, so that's always terrible. Now, one thing I do want to make clear is, if you clicked on this video, if you clicked on this show for me to bash WWE, for me to call them out on being the empire and just not caring about people for making all these business decisions in terms of the releases, and you're here for me to just rant and ramble about how terrible a company WWE is, then honestly, you've clicked on the wrong video. That's not what I'm going to do. I'm going to point out the pros and cons on each release, on some of the top releases that they've made over the past 2 years. I'm going to point out their pros and cons about the decisions they make. Like in everything in life, there are pros and there are cons. It's not always good or bad. That's what I'm going to do. So if you're expecting me to just go and just trash all over a company that I love, a company that I've been watching for over 16 years now, then you can go ahead and, unlike this video, if that's what you want, click away and just search on YouTube whatever you want to hear, because I'm here to say the things that I think about. And you might not agree with it, but it's the truth. So with that in mind, let's talk about WWE's releases. Why do they happen? Well, the very simple reason is WWE is a business. It's a business venture. They hire people, and unfortunately, sometimes they fire or they let go of people. That's been known for decades now. It's happened countless amount of times. Tons of superstars that had insurmountable talent were let go by this company at one point. And guess what? WWE survived. In some instances, they thrived and became more successful. In others, the lack of that superstar in their entertainment programming, you could tell that it was missing in some cases. But that's always going to be the case when it comes to releases. And the first release that I want to talk about, again, I'm not going to go through the whole laundry list of 80 plus superstars, because that's going to take a very long time to go over each and every single one of them. But for now, I want to talk about a superstar that made their debut on WWE television, I believe, in the summer of 2013 with the Wyatt family. He was the leader of the Wyatt family. Of course, I'm talking about Bray Wyatt, and specifically The Fiend, which is the last incarnation we got of the Bray Wyatt character on WWE programming. And he was released about 3 to 4 months ago, so his 90-day no-compete clause is up. It's over. He can compete, he can wrestle, he can sign for any company out there. He just hasn't at this point. But the fact is, Bray Wyatt always brought that entertainment value. And whatever he was doing, he was gold on the stick, on the microphone, on promos. You cared about Bray Wyatt. He made you care about his character. And he made you love or hate him because of that. And we've heard stories, we've read about how Bray Wyatt was so creative in NXT that he was on another level. And when he brought that to the WWE, to the main roster, to Monday Night Raw, and we got the Wyatt family versus the Shield. We got Bray Wyatt versus Daniel Bryan. We got Bray Wyatt versus John Cena. We've got the Fiend, Bray Wyatt. He was WWE Champion. He was Universal Champion. Bray Wyatt accomplished a lot of things in WWE. One thing, though, he did not accomplish with the leader of sports entertainment was truly establishing himself as a top guy on the main roster. Now, most fans always knew he had the potential. His matches weren't always great or entertaining. He didn't have the body type to give us a technical masterpiece of a match. But again, he was so creative with his characters, with his promos, that he could tell a story in that ring as well. So it did come as a surprise when Bray Wyatt was let go just months after WrestleMania, just months after losing to Randy Orton. So that's unfortunate. But it's also kind of lucky because, again, creative on the WWE's part hasn't been the best. Look no further than current Monday Night Raw and Friday Night SmackDown programming. WWE is at their lowest, especially with that golden egg fiasco at Survivor Series, which, again, I haven't been able to watch, but from what I understand, it was a promotional play. Like I said, it's a business, so they're going to make business decisions that affect their programming. That's nothing strange. But, they could and they should do better because they are the number one sports entertainment company above AEW. That's something that I will always stress in the world. So what's next for Bray Wyatt? Or in this case, Wyndham Rotunda, I think is his real name. What's next for that performer? Should he go to AEW, which is what every single wrestling fan out there in the internet wrestling community will tell you? Come to AEW. Look at all these former WWE stars that were just let go, that arrived in AEW. Look what they've done. Look what they are doing on Dynamite and Rampage and Dark and Elevation. Look what they are doing. And yes, AEW would be a great stop for Bray Wyatt, for the former Bray Wyatt. But AEW is also getting a little bit crowded. They are picking up all these released WWE talent that, yes, they're big names. They bring big value to the company. But you also have certain stars that are put on the back burner. For example, there's a lot of stars like Brian Cage that are not being used properly, in my opinion. But the thing is, being used properly in many fans' minds is being in the main event, or being a champion, or being in a high-profile program. And when you have so much talent, like AEW has right now, or like WWE has right now, some talent, most talent, are put on the back burner. And in that case, WWE is completely fair in releasing some stars to go and actually work for a living instead of just sitting out at home or at catering waiting for a creative to come up for something for them on WWE television. Now let's talk about the untapped potential of some released stars. Let's talk about a Keith Lee. Let's talk about a Karrion Kross, or an Ember Moon, or a Frankie Monet, or a John Morrison, or a Hit Row. These are all superstars that were recently released by WWE, that had been on WWE programming for a few weeks, for a few months in some cases, that creative had nothing for them at the time, but they were still on WWE television, still figuring things out. We were still able to notice them on our television. We were still able to tell, or this guy, Karrion Kross, even though he's not the same guy he was in NXT, he's not that same monster, he's not being presented to us in that way, he is still on Monday Night Raw. And eventually, once he gets enough TV time, once he gets enough character time, character development, and an actual story, fans all around the world and on TV will start caring about a guy like Karrion Kross, or about a guy like Keith Bearcat Lee. Guys who, if you watch NXT, and not a lot of WWE's core audience watched NXT on the USA Network, you know that these guys can go. You know that these guys can entertain in the middle of the ring. But again, I go back to the point that is, WWE creative is lacking. It's very lacking. Because WWE is about telling stories. It's about entertainment. It's about creating characters and character plot lines. It's not like AEW, where AEW is a little bit more simple. It's a little bit more standardized in professional wrestling, where it's just, oh, I'm a wrestler, you're a wrestler, let's compete to see who's the best wrestler. Let's compete for the championship. That's AEW. That's what they're trying to do. And that is something that WWE has moved away from since 1984. I get that. So each and every single time superstars like Frankie Monet and John Morrison and Karrion Kross and Keith Lee and Ember Moon appear on WWE television in any capacity, you know they've got untapped potential. You know they could be higher on the card. You know they could go in that ring and put on 20-minute classics with anybody, 20, 25, 30-minute classics with anybody in that ring. It's just creative has nothing for them at that time. In the most recent cases, very unfortunate, it's Hit Row. Hit Row was released weeks after being drafted to SmackDown. They were on NXT. They were a big act on NXT. One of the most entertaining acts on NXT. They got over big time with the NXT audience. Then they got drafted to SmackDown. They made one appearance as a group, and then B-Fab got released out of nowhere. Completely blindsided. For fans, for B-Fab, for Hit Row alike. Completely blindsided. Nobody can understand why they would take B-Fab out of Hit Row, when Hit Row had been working up until that point with B-Fab as part of the group. I'm guessing WWE creatives thought they don't need B-Fab. Well, that's their opinion. In my opinion, they did. Because they appeared a few more times after the fact, after that release. And Hit Row just wasn't the same. You could tell even in Ashanti the Adonis. You could tell in Isaiah Swerve Scott. You could tell in Top Dollar. They just seemed lost. Well, not completely lost, but they just seemed like there was somebody missing, something missing from their group. Something that was intangible. And the fact that WWE wasn't smart enough to realize that, their creative team at that time or during this time is not smart enough to realize that, speaks volumes as to how low creative is currently in WWE. And I'm going to hit that point a lot during this show, because WWE creative is just missing on a lot of instances. And I get it, it's a hard thing to do when you're writing for WWE and everything up until this point has been already done in the company. It has already been done in professional wrestling. That's very hard, but still, you can come up with something better. I mean, look no further than The Shield. The Shield made their debut, and then a month ago, what if WWE decides that, well, we're not thinking about a three-man team. We're not thinking about a stable or a group. We're thinking about, making this Shield group into a tag team. So one of these guys has to go. And it was either going to be Dean Ambrose or Seth Rollins because they looked at Roman Reigns as a top guy. So what if one of those two guys got released? It was not going to be the same. WWE itself was not going to be the same. I'm not saying Hit Row was going to reach that level or was already at that level, but again, Hit Row seemed like a small glimmer of light, a small glimmer of hope for WWE Creative to use something that was natural talent, natural charisma, natural entertainment on their programming, and they just screwed it up. That's creative in WWE right now. Then we gotta take a look at all these stars that were released and are currently in AEW or in Impact Wrestling or in Ring of Honor, NWA, Major League Wrestling, New Japan Pro Wrestling, everywhere else, And they've had success. They've been in high-profile matches. They've had an opportunity to show what they've got. And I know Deonna Purrazzo was not released in the past 2 years or anytime soon. But she was a part of NXT for quite a while. And WWE did nothing with her. Absolutely nothing. And now she's on Impact, considered to be one of the top professional wrestlers in the world. 2-time Knockouts champion. Over the past 2 years, before Mickie James beat her for the title at Bound for Glory, the Knockouts title was synonymous with Deonna Purrazzo. If you thought about the Knockouts championship in the past 2 years, you had to think about Deonna Purrazzo. There was nobody else. Jordan Grace held the title for 3 weeks, 1 month, and that was it. That was it. Everything else, Deonna Purrazzo. I'm blanking out on her. The Virtuosa, sorry. I was blanking out on her nickname on Impact Wrestling. But the Virtuosa, Deonna Purrazzo. Just so good on the mic. Very easy on the eyes. But what she does in that ring to tell a story and the match that got rave reviews at Bound for Glory, which again I haven't watched. It's going to be a lot of that right now. But the rave reviews that she got for her match against Mickie James at Bound for Glory. And WWE cannot figure out what to do with Deonna Purrazzo. The same thing with Mickie James. She's a legend. She's the current Knockouts champion. I believe she's now a 10-time women's champion in WWE and in Impact Wrestling. She went to Bound for Glory. She came back to Impact Wrestling. She put on a great show in NWA Empower. She produced that show. Brought Melina back into professional wrestling. Mickie James is just a very small example of what you can do outside of WWE. I cannot stress that enough. WWE may be the top entertainment company in the world, but they're not the only option. And if you're a wrestling fan, if you're a true hardcore wrestling fan, and you realize that and you understand that, you want to go big time, you want to get the highlights, you want to become a household name, or as close as you're going to get to becoming a household name, then you go and you try to make it in WWE, because at this point, that's mainstream. That's the only way you can get there. And AEW is trying to get close to that. They're not quite there yet. You got Andrade and Malakai Black, amongst other superstars in AEW who are currently enjoying success in that revolutionary company. Two superstars that, again, creative had nothing for on their programming, on WWE TV. I mean, they never even gave Andrade a shot to be a babyface on WWE television. And guess what? WWE is still looking for their Latino superstar to replace and take over the reins from Rey Mysterio. And if you ask me, they're going to keep looking and looking and looking because they don't have that current Latino star on their roster. They have Dominic Mysterio, which again, he needs to work a lot to get to that point. He needs to work a lot to even earn the mask or the Rey Mysterio name. I believe he said that he wants that name in the future. He needs to work a lot to get to that point. So I'm not seeing Dominic Mysterio taking that mantle anytime soon. Then you got Malakai Black. Again, if you look back on this YouTube channel, Aleister Black. I keep going to this. All these released superstars, every single one of them for the most part, had so much potential as a character. They could tell a hell of a story in that ring. And Aleister Black was one of them. If you want to talk about guys that could one day replace the aura and the phenom that The Undertaker and Kane became on WWE television for decades, look no further than a Bray Wyatt. Look no further than an Aleister Black. WWE should have built them up, should have really protected them, given them this aura of not complete invincibility. But if you go up against them, then you're in for some crazy, blow your mind games that will just give the WWE audience something to really bite their teeth into and really enjoy. And the fact that WWE Creative had nothing for them in that arena, in that area of supernatural. And again, I'm not a big horror fan. I'm not a fan of the supernatural. But if you bring that to WWE television, and if it works, it worked for the Brothers of Destruction in the past, why can't it work right now for these stars? And you could not do that. You botched that. And now AEW is trying to do the same with Malakai Black. It's not quite working on their show because, again, their show is more about professional wrestling. It's more about competition. It's more about a sports league. So when you bring in a character that is very theatrical, that is very entertainment-based, I'm not saying it's going to fall flat on their feet. It's just going to take them a long while to get there because the AEW audience appreciates guys like Kenny Omega, like Pac, like the Lucha Brothers, like the Young Bucks. Guys who can work in that ring. You have a cool character, fine, but get in that ring and give us a slobber knocker of a match, and we'll care about you. Until then, sure, you got a cool character, but, we care about the in-ring product. So again, going back to creative, all these superstars that are having success outside of WWE, rightfully they should. Because talent like that you cannot find anywhere else. But again, WWE Creative is just faulting their own growth. And it's a shame, it's a shame, it's a shame. And this leads me to my next and final point. And that is just a simple question. Has NXT, or in this case NXT 2.0, gotten to the point of hurting, got to a little 4-year-old version movie reference right there, sorry. If you get that, kudos. If you don't, go watch the 4-year-old version, please. But is NXT currently hurting the main roster? Because as far as I'm concerned, if you look at the current main roster on Raw and SmackDown, the younger stars, you got Austin Theory, you got Dominic Mysterio at 24, you got Otis at 27, and everybody else is pretty much in their 30s. And I'm not trying to age shame here. I'm not. It's just, and really, in the end all be all, the number itself does not matter in wrestling. It doesn't matter if you're 20, 30, or 40 when it comes to programming or entertainment. If you're good enough, you're going to rise to the top and you're going to make it. It doesn't matter. You can ask DDP, who became a main eventer and a world champion for WCW in his 40s. It doesn't really matter. All I'm saying is, there is a program age. There is a wrestling age. And that is the number of years that you've been on TV. And the number of years you've been in the main event scene. For example, Brock Lesnar is old for the main event scene. He's been in the main event scene since 2002. Off and on, yes, but since 2002. It's been almost 20 years of Brock Lesnar in the main event scene. Compare that to Drew McIntyre, who has been in the main event scene for almost 2 years. You know, you weigh those options, and I believe there's only about 5 to 10 years difference between the two men. So that's what I'm referring to. And then you look at the main roster, and you got guys that are debuting on Raw and SmackDown at 28, at 30, at 32, at 34. And guess what? Unless you give them a great storyline, a great character, which, like I said, and I keep saying, it's not going to happen anytime soon with WWE Creative right now. But unless you do that, unless you push them to the moon, you're not going to get there until 2, 3, or 5 years down the line if they're consistent and they're still employed by WWE. Whereas in the past, you had somebody like Randy Orton, legend in the business right now. Without a shadow of a doubt, first ballot Hall of Famer. He will lead his class, no shadow of a doubt there. And if he doesn't, then millions of fans around the world will just attack WWE on social media for the fact of not having him lead his own class in the future. But Randy Orton made his debut on TV at 22. Became a world champion by 24. And was a bona fide main eventer and a household name by the time he was 28, 29. And he's been a main eventer, a reliable top guy for WWE for the past 12 to 15 years. We talk about a guy like John Cena, the face that runs the place, or at least he was. He made his debut, I believe, at 24. With that ruthless aggression slap heard around the world at that time in 2002 against Kurt Angle. He was WWE champion by 27, and he was a face of the company by 28. And he is one of the biggest names in professional wrestling history. And he has provided some of the best matches. We've got, look at in the past, Shawn Michaels. Shawn Michaels and Kurt Angle, they both debuted in their early years. Bret Hart, the same thing. They both debuted in their early years, and over the years, as the years passed, we saw them grow their craft, grow their strength, their prowess in the middle of that ring, year in, year out, and we could see that progress on main roster, on WWE's programming, year in and year out, and that is something that we are currently not getting with WWE, and it's all because of NXT. And I don't hate NXT. I'm not saying that it's bad, inherently bad. It's a great way to train them. It's a great way to prepare them. But in my mind, fine, bring him to NXT, give him 3 to 6 months in the developmental show, in the developmental programming, teaching them about the hard camera, teach them about how to work the crowd and mannerisms and present their character, and then throw them on WWE TV. And if they can make it with what they're given, then they are there to stay. You got guys like Tommaso Ciampa, current NXT champion, and Johnny Gargano, who should have been a part of the main roster, I don't know, about 3 to 4 years ago. But instead, right now, they're being used, and maybe Johnny Gargano might have way too little time left, according to current contract negotiations. But they've been used to elevate younger stars, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's how they are supposed to be used. But if you consider NXT to be the developmental brand, then you should not have guys who are top stars who could definitely make it on the main roster still on that show, still stuck in the same spot. I'm hoping that after WrestleMania season, next year, after Dallas, we're able to see guys like Braun Breaker, fantastic star. I watch NXT at this point, hoping to watch his segment, just biding my time. Okay, the show started. When is Braun Breaker gonna make his appearance on this show? A promo, a match, it doesn't matter. I want this guy who just sounds so much like Scott Steiner. Oof, like so much. But I want this. I want to see this guy, what he is able to do. And he's just 23 years old. 24, I believe. 23, 24, in that age range. I want to see what he is able to do on the main roster. You got, like, Carmelo Hayes. You got Cameron Grimes. Tony D'Angelo. That character, man. I love it. I love that character. I love that accent that he's bringing to the show. All these guys, they should be a part of the main roster after WrestleMania season. Give us these younger guys. And I promise you, it'll be something different, it'll be something entertaining, and WWE fans will tune in. But as far as I'm concerned, NXT went from being a developmental brand where you train superstars and prepare them for the main roster to being its own pseudo third brand that WWE doesn't really want to acknowledge, but they really don't want to hurt that show, because if the top stars leave that show, then fans won't stick around. So they've got to figure that out. But until then, WWE is going to be really lacking in the talent department. And again, releases suck, especially right before the holidays. But it also gives all these stars that were given their release papers opportunities to work and to grow other companies, grow their craft, grow their name for other companies in the future to come. And that is still something very exciting to me. And if you ask me, AEW's future is full of releases. Believe me when I say that. Their roster is getting bloated. It's getting too big. And look no further than their Dark and Elevation shows, which go past 2 hours at some point, with 15 to 20 matches in some of them on some of those shows. At one point, very soon, hopefully after the holidays, AEW will at one point have to make some very hard decisions and release some of their stars. And I just want to know if the IWC will react in the same way, in the same manner as they have done with WWE. Because like I said, this is a business, and these are decisions that need to be made. So with that said, try to enjoy your Thanksgiving. Try to have as much food, turkey, ham, mashed potatoes, gravy, pecan pie, whatever, the whole works. Just have everything you can on this Thanksgiving Day. Enjoy it with your friends, enjoy it with your family, just have a great time. I'm thankful for all of you guys watching this show. I am thankful to be alive. I am thankful for the jobs and my friends and family. I am thankful for so much in this life. And until next time, happy Thanksgiving. Bye-bye.